Hello and welcome, team. If you haven't seen my videos before, my name is Dane Max, and I'm the Managing Director of the National Community Law Project, CIC. And welcome. So if you're watching this video and it's been sent to you, it's because you've been successful on the onboarding. You probably had a conversation with me first. And this is an explainer then of what we're going to go through as the project to prep you, so you understand what we require of you, and what we're doing on your behalf. Yes, okay. So, yeah, it's been really, really good speaking with a lot of you now, and I'm on board in now for the sixth year we're going into. So we started in 2020. And yeah, so I've shared some information before about the different areas of law. So this is just an introduction, just to let you know about the organisation again. We're also going to be explaining about the different types of careers you can go into. The good thing with the law degree is it's very wide and vast, and explainers on how we help you to get to where you need to be. But it's not a one-way street. It will require a bit of work. It'll require you dealing with clients, and it'll also require you with engaging with team members and really understanding what you're here for. So it'll explain to you how you got here and how to use this opportunity. Um, It'll also explain to you about the power of the legal knowledge which you've acquired through your law degree, plus the experience which you'll get from us will give you wisdom. And wisdom is the key in moving forward, enable to navigate your career, knowing what you want to do with your legal career, and where you want to go with it, and keeping the doors and options open. So when you do actually get into explaining things and you are interviewed, for instance, with a law firm or with a business, which we'll go through now shortly, you'll have an understanding of the context of what you've done. Plus, you'll also be profiling yourself within this organization as well, which I will go through shortly. But the first thing is understanding how you got here and how to use this opportunity. But before we do that, we need to clarify what it is you actually want, um, on with your law degree, and what kind of careers you want. Now, what we tend to have when law students, well, like I said, we've had many law students and graduates, hundreds come through this organization over the years. And one common theme is a lot of law students and graduates do not really know where area they want to go into. Typically, they like the traditional route, such as the sound of becoming a solicitor or becoming a barrister, which is an exceptional job. It can be very fast paced, very fun, very futuristic, as in the fact of being able to project yourself moving forward, and obviously in high demand. Um, but another issue which we do have, and it's not just with law students and graduates, it's also with the general public. So because the SRA the SRA and the Bar Standards Board are tasked with ensuring that people are compliant and regulated in order to provide reserved activities such as right of audience, for both the conduct of litigation, certain things such as probate. So you should all know the reserve rights. If not, you need to check out the Legal Services Act 2007 and understand what reserve rights are. Now, they're things we do not practice, as I think I went through in the other video, but I'll go through it just again. So we're not solicitors, we're not barristers. What we are is law students and graduates, and we get together to assist people with legal support to the best of our ability, from low income, primarily low income, marginalised and vulnerable backgrounds. And we typically tend to be helping a lot of persons and litigants at the moment, due to lack of affordability of being able to afford representation. And if it's something we cannot do, and we can try to seek out qualified solicitors and barristers as well. And it's a really good way of understanding how them firms work when you move forward. But so if I go through, I think it's good to start with the actual legal careers and types of things you can do with a law degree. Now, a law degree, as you're well aware, is one of the hardest degrees you can study, but it's designed in that purpose in order to give you the fundamental foundation, especially with a qualifying law degree, of being able to practice law, so everybody's on the same page when it comes to law. And it's a really good degree. I went to university back quite late, so I actually started in 2019 after many years of running businesses. So it was a really good learning curve for me, as well as picking up a lot of transferring and picking up a lot of new skills along the way. It just turned out it's something that I actually love doing. I love serving the community in this way. It's something that I'm really happy about. So let's go through these legal careers then. So it can help you define certain things you want to do. So it gives you more of a broader scope, as opposed to the limitation of the traditional careers. But we will start off with the traditional careers anyway, just to make sure that everybody is clear on the different aspects. And like I said, this is only a brief overview. There's plenty more things you can do with the law degree, but it just expands the scope. So then you've got a clear understanding of where you can go. So the traditional legal careers. So with a law degree itself, it develops highly transferable skills, including things like critical thinking, research, which is a major part of everything which we do, advocacy, negotiation, ethics, regulatory understanding. And these skills open doors literally across multiple sectors. So a traditional legal career, so we'll start with solicitor. So a solicitor will advise clients, they draft legal documentation, they negotiate settlement, represent clients in court, depending on their specialism. Sometimes they need to apply for their higher rights, which is something you'll learn more about as you go along. Now, solicitors are regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority that sets out the standards and compliance that solicitors need to be able to follow in order to be regulated under the SRA as solicitors. They become what we call administrators of the court, and there's certain things, certain tasks they can do, and they're trained to do, hence through the SQB 1 and 2, that they're trained to do, or if you've done a training contract, in order to make sure that they meet those standards so they know the compliance areas. So although we will know them as well, solicitors are specifically specialised in that area and are regulated, so they can conduct the process of litigation, which is taking things through court, through the court system, and also supporting barristers. A barrister is somebody, so if we go on to the next one, which is a barrister, is somebody who specialises in advocacy and litigation, typically representing clients in court and providing specialist legal opinions. So you get barristers, we can get different types of barristers with different specializations as well. Or you can have common law chambers as well, where you have barristers who specialize in a couple of areas, if not in multiple areas. And they're usually called common law chambers. And the traditional role for there to go into is to go through, join one of the inns. So there's 4 inns at the moment in the UK, and once you pick an inn, you kind of there, and that's where you kind of stay. So the 4 inns would be Lincoln's Inn. There's also Gray's Inn. There's the Inner Temple. And with them in, then you go there, and that's where you do your barrister training, and you learn all the skills you need to do as a barrister as well. Again, so and as I said, there's different specializations, and there's different things you can do with it again. A lot of advice where you'll tend to get from barristers is typically because how hard it is to get a specialization and to get the work in as a barrister. You will typically get barristers, and I've spoken to several who said the same thing, who would recommend to go through the solicitor route and then just apply for your higher rights in order to represent people in courts, because by that way then you can still generate an income for yourself. And but also then you can also, if it's a passion of yours representation wise, then you can also do that as well. But like I said, not knocking barristers, because the once you kind of go through that as a specialism, you can learn a lot, and you can really pick up moving forward as well. Other traditional routes is the chartered legal executive or Silex lawyer. That's a qualified lawyer specialising in specific areas of law. Often a more flexible route than a solicitor or barrister training, but it's just for if you want to go into a specialist area, you can do that as well. And then you've got paralegal as well, which basically everyone really starts off with, and that provides legal support, research, drafting, case preparation within law firms, chambers, or organisations even. Judicial roles, we're not going to go into that too much because that is like really a different route and there's different routes to take. But just to highlight them, it's going to be like magistrates, if you want to become a district judge or a circuit judge or a high court judge. But they're different routes and typically they're things we can discuss. So outside of the traditional role, you've also got public sector roles. So, where you might decide to go in and you might become a government legal service advisor or government legal service supporter, government legal service caseworker. And that's basically where you work for the central government departments, advising on legislation, policy, and any potential litigation. There's Crown Prosecution Service, CPS lawyer, and that prosecutes criminal cases on behalf of the state. There's also local authority lawyer. So as a local authority lawyer, you'll be advising councils on housing, things like planning, education, safeguarding, and governance. You got also parliamentary as well, or legislative drafter. So that's existing in drafting. That's assisting in drafting laws, regulations, and statutory instruments. Or a policy advisor, and your job would be there to help shape public policy using legal analysis and research to make sure that you've got everything compliant wise. Now, typically with all of them positions, it's about actually knowing the law, what laws, and obviously there's a lot to it. There's a lot of work involved to make sure that the actual public sector is meeting their public sector duties, and also making sure that the policy actually reflects the legal statutes and relevant case law where appropriate is incorporated into the policies, and that could have to be updated quite a lot and quite quickly, depending on what's going on. You could be looking for to work in the criminal justice system. So the criminal justice system, you could be looking at becoming a police legal advisor or a custody legal advisor. And that is basically provides legal advice within police forces. Probation officer, so you working with offenders or with the aim to reduce offending and support rehabilitation. You might want to go and work in the prison services as a prison legal roles, which oversees legal compliance, things like prisoner rights and institutional governance. Or the HM courts and tribunals service roles, where you might want to actually work in the courts to gain some experience. A lot of people actually like to do that to really understand how the STEM systems work. And that's everything from court management to legal operations to justice system administration. And it's a really good way to gain a lot of experience. You could be doing like you're doing now with us, human rights, community, and social justice careers. So you could become a community law advocate, which you will be doing in some areas. You'll be doing that with us, and that's basically supporting individuals or families with housing, benefits, employment, family law issues, that kind of thing. Immigration as well, where people have got them kind of concerns. But remember, there's also limits on what we can do with that as well, which you'll learn as you go along. Legal caseworker, so like working for us as a CIC, where you're assigned a client and you work in a small team, supporting that client to gain experience, working with each other, and I'll tell you why that's important as we go along. You've also got human rights officer. working with NGOs, charities again, and international organisations for rights protection. EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, a big thing that's raising a lot of awareness and controversy at the moment. Ensures compliance with equality legislation and best practice. All victim support and advocacy roles. Victim supports victims of crime through the legal process. So really helping those who are vulnerable in need, who have been victims of crime or of other kind of victimizations as well, such as harassment, intimidation, etc. Commercial and business corporate careers. Now, this is something that is growing rapidly in the UK at the moment. Where it's organisations are actually seeking to have somebody with legal qualifications in their business, and it comes in many forms. So we'll be looking at in-house legal counsel, works with companies providing legal advice on contracts, compliance, employment. You'll also be looking at things like risk. Risk is a big thing in order to be able to forecast potential risks based on experience, knowledge, and wisdom. Compliance officer ensures organisations meet their legal and regulatory requirements. Such things as making sure they're in alignment with the Health and Safety Act, the Employment Rights Act, making sure they're in compliance with things like the Equality Act. Also making sure that there's certain compliances with directors doing their job properly, managers doing their job properly, and other areas of that business as well, making sure that that all of them things are covered for compliance wise. And there's also other statutory instruments as well that I need to be aware of, such as if they're looking for policy and finance to make sure the finances are being done correctly and meeting the regulatory compliance, and other areas as well. Also be looking at company secretary or governance officers, and that basically manages corporate governance, regulatory filings and board compliance. So that just sits on a senior top and become an advisor to the directors or the governors of the organization, to make sure that they're doing their job properly, or trustees, that kind of thing, and to make sure that they're also put in a safe position. Risk management officer. So you're the job there, which is a pretty exciting job, which is basically looking at risk and making sure that risk management is undertaken. So you identify and mitigate legal and regulatory risks as they arise, and make sure that the company is in the best compliance moving forward, and also making sure that that's mitigated as well. Contracts manager, another thing which is in high demand, and that's drafts, negotiates, and manages commercial contracts. So you make sure that they're drafted, negotiated well, and then make sure that they're managed effectively, as not to bring disrepute to the company or disrepute within contract relations. And then if them things arise, you would deal with them on behalf of the organisation. You can also look into finance, banking, and professional services. So things like a financial crime analysis. Now, as we know, fraud is on an increase continuously at the moment. Many people are affected by it. It has devastating impacts on people's lives. So a financial crime analyst, will investigate fraud, money laundering, financial misconduct, them type of things. And then be able to provide solutions. And even before that, making sure there's certain indemnities in place to mitigate that kind of and to minimise loss to a company. It can be devastating or to a person. Regulatory affairs specialists. So that's basically works with regulators and regulated industries. So another one of that would be like the environmental industry, heavily regulated at the moment. Sorry, excuse me. Yes, I work within a highly regulated areas to make sure that that people are working in. Tax advisor, tax consultant. Typically, you'll be on tax law and compliance as opposed to the actual figurative side of it. but in the legal context. Or insolvency practitioner with further qualifications, which deals with company and personal insolvency. You might want to go down the education route. So you might be looking at education, academia and training. So such things such as a law lecturer, an academic, or a legal skills trainer. So part of this process as well, when you're working with us, we ask you to do probably a few videos where you educate the public on a certain area of law. It'll be done with about 2 or 3 people at a time. But that also helps profile you for the future. So then if you do, when you do decide to go into any kind of legal field, you can demonstrate your work with the project and say, well, we've done this presentation, say for instance, on how to ensure I've got a fair tenancy, for example. And you can do training, online training for that as well, and be able to answer questions, that kind of stuff, because it really does build your skill set that way and allows you to demonstrate the stuff that you've been learning and doing as you've been going along. There'll also be like an education policy advisor as well. So you develop an educated law-related law and develops education law-related policy. So again, that's very specific area, and allows you to build that as well. You might decide a career as a mediator, so helping parties resolve disputes without going to court. Another thing that really needs to be that more people need to be doing. Again, high demand. We're big advocates of trying not is to make sure that things don't go to court, and doing ADR as opposed to hitting the court. That can really amplify problems, and stress for the public and for our clients who really don't understand until they hit it what's involved. Arbitration as well, so acting as a neutral decision maker in commercial disputes, especially in specific areas. So you tend to have somebody with a specific skill set as an arbitrator who understands the industry and is kind of considered an expert helping in them negotiations. And negotiation consultant as well. But another big thing that's needed is being able and having the ability to negotiate with other people. It is a career within itself. If trying to create win-win situations for people, and organizations, and trying to get them on an equal footing so things can move on as opposed to being stuck. And you find that a lot. We'll find that with a lot of the clients. A lot of the clients we come across, you'll tend to find um, really could resolve their issues if they wanted to. It's just somebody's expecting more than the other person. There's them type of issues there, and that really leads to conflict and undisputed. But there are other factors to consider, different depending on the area of law. Legal journalists, so reports on legal cases, policy and justice issues. I definitely would like to see more of that at the moment, especially with the way the legal system is going. Legal content writer, so where you're going in and you're working for organisations such as solicitors or law centres or legal advice centres, that kind of thing, which we're working for, writing legal content. And we'll probably ask you to do that as well for us and leave your name on there. So then again, that adds to your profiling, because our job is to profile you as much as possible and equip you with the skills to the best of our ability to get you where you need to go in your future careers. Law blogger and commentator as well. That's another thing that seems to be on an increase at the moment. We definitely need more of it, but it does seem to be on an increase where people start having certain specialisms or obsessions with healthy obsessions with certain areas of law, and they like to develop blogs and comment on them as they go along, highlighting a lot of issues related to that. And then obviously publishing and editorial roles as well. So works with legal textbooks, journals, and online platforms. A huge area that's on a rapid increase at the moment is technology, innovation, and emerging legal careers. So legal technologists works in the intersection of law and technology. And as you know, because of the emerging technologies, there's many sections to go into now. Where it is a massively increasing area of law, simply because governments across the world, which you're probably pretty aware of more than me, governments across the world and organisations are investing literally trillions of pounds across the board into technologies and emerging technology. So this is an area of law that's constantly increasing and will probably become the most dominant area of law before long, in par with family law. AI and law consultants as well, advises on the legal, ethical, and regulatory aspects of AI. Data protection officer as well, ensures compliance, using at the moment GDPR and data protection rights, and also as well cybersecurity and private security specialists, advising on digital risk and compliance. Other areas you can go into is legal consultants, where you just specialize in giving business advice. Now, myself, I'm a legal consultant. I've again dealt with hundreds of businesses myself, and through the project, and basically assist them in structuring in the correct way, and the most compliant way and ethical way, for their services and their clients, especially heavy service based businesses. You might want to become an entrepreneur or a business founder. Again, when the research was done, I think it was 70% of Gen Zs as opposed to 30% of millennials wanted to start their own business or envisioned themselves running their own business at some point. So if you're in that bracket, I know we're coming into the alpha gen stage at the moment, but if you wanted to be within that bracket, if you're within that bracket as a Gen Z, you'll probably understand that that's the way forward. And I do actually think that's a really positive thing. If people are actually setting up their own business, and I can tell you, Testify is doing it the wrong way round. So I was in business first, then done my law degree. Doing a law degree, then doing business puts you at a substantial, strong advantage moving forward. If you wanted to go into a business. Management consultants, so you apply legal reasoning to organizational strategy. So another thing with management consultants as well, especially from a legal perspective, is management consultants have ideas every day. That's their job, and they can go above and beyond. You can be inundated with that, but they fail to understand the applying legal rationale to their organization. So it's really a big job, in order to make sure that they got all the legal compliance. So say, for instance, they might want to recruit, say for instance, they want a bigger drive on recruiting people who are older, because they believe that they've got a foundational belief that older people are more wiser. And although that rationale is, just an example, and then what they need to understand is the Equality Act don't particularly allow them to do that. Or for instance, if they are in a heavy sports industry and they have concerns about health and safety policy, and anything, there's certain vulnerable groups that they can't recruit or have biased reasoning against. We need to make sure that they understand that the law doesn't allow them to do that kind of stuff. So it just gives an idea of how to apply to that kind of to management consultant, which basically is a very broad term for any kind of organizational strategy, and you'll come across that a lot whilst you're learning with us. Social enterprise and CRC director, so mission led. There's a really fulfilling role, but it also got a lot of challenges to it, and that's basically leading a mission driven organization using legal and governance expertise. So it's basically what we do now with the companies. You might also be looking for international and global careers. So you might be looking to work with international NGOs, non-government organizations, sorry, development agencies or intergovernmental bodies where, for instance, you'd have the UN, which works with multiple different countries, and different legal systems, which will become more and more that way as we move along, because we are becoming more global as we're going along. So there'll be a lot of intergovernmental, interlegal skills to be developed. And then diplomatic and foreign services, so support international relations or treaty work. So another thing which is a really big thing, and as globalization becomes more, and the borders become more blurred, international relations is going to be needed more and more on multiple areas of work. And then you're looking at immigration and asylum advisor as well, working with migrants, refugees, and international clients. So then we can kind of summarize where careers, and this is, like I said, this isn't a broad list because there's far more careers you can go into, because a law degree will help you be able to get the best for that organization in both in the way they set up, but also in the way they're protecting themselves in the future and their ethical guidance as well as they're moving forward. But just as we just discussed, it could hit everything from politics to journalism to business leadership, public administration, ethics and government roles, community organising, regulatory bodies. So it's not a single group, and it's really important to know that, and that's why I've made it really important as a first topic for us to discuss as you're on board with us, because it's really important for you to understand that the law degree isn't a limitation to become a solicitor or barrister. That might be the least. I have no intention whatsoever of becoming a solicitor or a barrister at the moment. It's not something which I want to do. I'm quite happy doing what I do because I'm serving the community, I'm serving the community need, and I believe it's really fundamental in order for us to do that. So I have no interest in that whatsoever. But as I've explained myself, I've also worked with business as well as individuals, as well as families, as well as you all with the organisation, and as well as working with people for government organisations as well, and a range of other things. So to develop that skill set, so we've got a very broad base of knowledge, putting us at a significant advantage above others, because these opportunities don't come often. Especially the National Community Law Project is like one of very, very few organisations that offers this kind of diverse education and application of education and experience, because we were actually set up to do that. And they're the two key parts of what we were to give law students and graduates the experience, and then you can select that way. So going on to that then, now that's really important for us to go through. So I know it's a bit long-winded, but it is really important for you to know that. And it might be worth you actually re-listening to this video so you're very confident that you know what we kind of expect from you. So what will happen when you get on board, and it's not going to be in a set order at the moment because we're still kind of putting the infrastructure in place. So my job typically within the organization is oversight of the organization and to basically get involved. There's not one aspect of the organization I don't know about. And the same with the executive assistant and certain people within the organization who there is nothing they don't know about the organization. So that that is our job. I've retained a lot of experience over the years, so I'm very good at doing it. But plus, I had a lot of experience before that, in being able to do that with running national companies. So that's my job. So fundamentally, every day, or typically, my typical day is dealing with clients. So we'll be doing client calls. Now, you'll join me on client calls, so it'll only be a handful of you at a time on different calls, and you'll get to know how I speak to clients, what I explain to clients, and then you'll get to understand how clients interact with us, the questions we ask, why we ask them, why we do what we do, and then you're going to develop, and then you're going to be trial to do it yourself. So then you'll be handling client calls as well. And then a part of your skill package will also be further communication then with that client. Now, typically, it doesn't mean that that client will be your client. What it means is you're developing a key skill set. So everything which we do and every process we follow is to equip you with as much skill as possible. So when you leave the National Community Law Project, and go into your future careers, whether you're following a traditional route or the other routes I just highlighted, that you could speak in depth and in confidence about client management. So typically, that's number one. What organizations will want you to be able to do and have the ability to deal with. Now, you'll deal with, so still on the client management side of it, the client onboarding side of it. Dealing with them kind of clients can be tricky, but it can be managed very well. And each of you will develop your own skill set in doing it. So typically, what it does is ask questions. So we introduce ourselves, and then you'll ask questions, and I will show you how to do this step by step. So typically, we'll answer. My name is Dane. I'm from the National Community Law Project (CIC), and so we'll just give you an explainer about what happens. The purpose of this call is to number one, explain about who we are, and then to find out a little bit more about your case to see if it's something we can help with. The client normally agrees, and then we turn around and explain that my name is Dane. I'm from the National Community Law Project (CIC). The National Community Law Project we're not solicitors, we're not barristers. The National Community Law Project is set up by a load of law graduates and students. And what we do is assist people primarily from low income, marginalised, and vulnerable areas with legal support, or people who are persons and litigants and can't get support and cannot get support anywhere else. And then I'll ask them then if they understand, and then I'll also ask them then about to explain about their case. That was really important then to be able to show a lot of empathy, but to also be able to know what the client is talking about. So you'll have some clients who'll be able to tell you from start to finish what's happened. You'll have some clients who'll be able to pick bits off. You'll have some people who'll start from the end, and it's our job to guide that conversation so we got an understanding of what they're explaining. And then what will happen is then things, and it'll take a day or two before it starts triggering. And I've seen it happen multiple times. Then it starts triggering the legal experience you either previously had or the legal knowledge you're currently learning. And then you'll start being able to ask more in-depth questions. And it's a really, really good skill to develop, because then it puts you in a position then of where you can deal with clients from start to finish, and that's the process we're taking you through. So if we decide to take a client on as well, what we do then is we do everything through WhatsApp now for client communication wise. The reason being is because we struggle with different kinds of apps and communication methods, everything from email, from apps, from telephone calls. And what we tended to find was we'd have different sections of people who just wouldn't be able to use one thing or another, and it became really confusing. Although we still managed it was just a lot of hard work, especially if you're dealing with a lot of clients, which we are. So we just put the message out there. So we asked a range of clients, quite a lot of them, what would you prefer to use? If we can make easy communication easier, what would you prefer to use? And literally practically everyone come back and said WhatsApp. So, they like WhatsApp, and I don't know why. But this is a range as well. So we've got people with all different kinds of vulnerabilities and issues. And we have some people who didn't want to, but the vast majority were interested in using the WhatsApp groups. So we can set up a group on WhatsApp then. And then what we typically do is then we'll stick the relevant people in there, which you'll learn as we go along. So and we typically will go for 2 to 3 people in there, and then we'll alternate as you go along. And then your job is to manage that person's case. So remember also the things, and you'll learn this as we go along, but there's certain things we do and there's certain things we don't. The first thing we do, typically, after we've done the client call, then we've said, we're happy to use you. We're going to set up a WhatsApp group and we'll work within that. We put the relevant people in the WhatsApp group, and that could be yourself or something else. If it's not yourself, then we give the communication over, which is usually recorded. So we usually got a note taker on the actual information as well, so we can take all the information down with the note taker. Sometimes it will require telephone calls, but it's just to get a broad understanding. And it's usually typically better that after you do the client call, is to make sure then that you take notes as well. and then give those, and then make a summary of them notes if you're not taking them at the time, and of what you've understood, and help somebody straight away, because otherwise people do forget. And that's really annoying then, because then you've got to ask the client more questions anyway. So then the WhatsApp group is set up. The client is put in the WhatsApp group, and then introductions are made. So then when there's an introduction, usually from myself, if I'm in the group, might be time more executive assistants, maybe legal secretaries as well, who gather information. Unless your team are doing that, sometimes we'll assign you to do them sites as well. And then what we do is ask the client for all the evidence they've got. So we want everything written text wise. We want everything they've got in relation to their case. The reason being is we don't do anything on hearsay. We can't. So before we do any kind of legal research or legal analysis on their actual case, we need all the evidence, and we base all the evidence on the evidence. We base all the research on the evidence that we actually got. That's the professional and best practice way to move forward. So then we put the evidence together in a bundle, in an evidence bundle, in a typically try to put into a chronological order, and then I'll read through that. Maybe we'll have to ask some questions along the way of the client before, but that can be used as the basis of legal analysis, and then providing the options of what needs to happen next based on that. The good thing with chronological order, sorry, team, is anything that comes in after that, it can just be added to the bottom of it. So it can, so if anything happens further, which typically do. And then we're in a position then to discuss, the actual options that may be available. Now, in that process, you'll be working as a team. Now, the reason why we put you in teams together that way is because what you'll realize, and this is what happens in actual law firms as well, traditional settings, is pooling our knowledge together. You'll find that you've got certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and other people have certain strengths and weaknesses that you don't really have, and then you kind of pool it together, and it also gives a variety of different perspectives on the legal issue. And then what you do is you discuss through them as a team. You'll do meetings with myself as well, or available people in supervisory, who will go through different areas with you, and you'll pick that up very, very quickly. But the good thing is about moving, and you will be in different teams with different people, with different clients. And the reason why we do it that way for is to give you the greatest skill set possible in managing clients and cases, to the best of your ability, whilst developing the skills of being able to communicate with other people and pull their knowledge out and work as a team. Now, this is where people get involved with, for instance, law firms. So if somebody wants to go into a law firm, all law firms typically are different. They've got different characters. But fundamentally, what they're looking for is people they can rely on. And it goes back to people, and the reliability comes from people who are flexible, adaptable, can work on their own, or can work in a team. So that's the fundamental four things. So um, when people are running law firms or they're solicitors and they've got a load of cases there, they want to be able to allocate the cases out so then they can manage it from their perspective moving forward. And so it's not them being lazy or them assigning you as solicitors, and that it's them having to focus their attention on being able to get the results, the actual results for the client, because that's their job as the lead advocate, as the solicitor, or even in chambers as the barrister. So they need somebody to go through there, somebody they can trust, somebody who's reliable, somebody who's got a strong skill set in order to move forward with that. But the fundamental things they're looking for to start off with is going to be somebody they can rely on. So somebody who's flexible, somebody who's adaptable, and somebody who is a good team player, but also can work on their own. That's what for law firms fundamentally you're looking for. So that's the basis of every law firm you're going to be looking for. And so then the second thing they'll be looking for is, do you fit into the company culture? Now, the only way you're going to know about the company culture is by researching that company. So it's always good to try to get a preferred law firm as opposed to any law firm. It's always good to try and have a handful of law firms, which you want to do. Study them very well, study their management structure, study who they are, find out who they are as much as possible, and then keep on to them. So if you get refused on the first time, apply a second time, follow them up with phone calls. I know it sounds like a bit of harassment. I'm not saying do it like on a daily basis and really annoy them, but just always keep the option open, let them know that you are really interested, but make sure the culture fits with you because they're going to be looking if you're going to fit with that culture. So that's another really important part of where you're going to go for. The next one is being able to demonstrate a level of skill. So there's thousands of people studying law degrees every year. So in order to stand out from them thousands of people with the feedback we're getting from is the skills which I've just demonstrated, then being able to, from what you're learning from us, is being able to demonstrate that skill base. You have got to stand out as your own person. And it doesn't mean you've got to be a specific type of person. Some people see being working in law firms as being really like aggressive and assertive, that's really not the way to go about it. That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is people who they feel safe that can carry the organization forward. So you might be more laid back than other people, but providing you're doing what you're saying you're gonna be doing, and you know a lot, and you know enough or a lot, depends how much you want to throw yourself into here, and be able to communicate that. They'll expect you to be able to talk on that level. Remember, everything with law is advocacy, is communication. That's what people they're looking for you. They're looking to be looking for you or the firm to represent them. So you've got to keep that in mind. So that is what law firms are looking for, is people being able to say, yeah, but well, before previously we did have a client there. She was really stressed out. I felt really bad for her, but all she really needed to do was file all she needed to do was file a claim. She didn't really want to file a claim, so what we done is just helped her with negotiation, really. So we kind of kept costs down for the clients, but brought it in as well. Um, but they're also going to be looking for, but as law firms themselves, they're also going to be looking for your ability to bring in money as well. So because law firms, unfortunately, they've got very high overheads. The insurance alone can run into, depending on the firm, can run into thousands of pounds just for the insurances. And I mean like tens of thousands, if not even into hundreds of thousands, depending on it. That's just insurance, let alone keeping the lights on, making sure everyone's salary is paid and everything else, in an economy that is struggling and where customers can pay less, are struggling and paying and getting paid less. So you can imagine the difficulty they're under. So it's quite easy for people to criticize law firms for not being able to do as much pro bono as they would like. But the reality is it's a very expensive business. Regulated, they're highly regulated. Same with chambers as well. Differences with chambers, everybody contributes typically. So if you've got a chambers, everyone's self-employed, they all contribute to the chambers. In a law firm, it can be a limited company, it can be any kind of setup or a PLC, and then you've got the issues of people. Then of the team they've got to look after, so they've got to make sure that all the team are highly competent in being able to generate money. And that is also going to be another part of what you're going to be doing within this organization as well. So every team member that gets involved, you set up a fundraiser, and this is also helps us, of course. Remember, we are like under the not-for-profit bracket, so we are looking to, although we got costs to pay. We're also, we do think we're not money driven, if that makes sense, because we don't have the overheads of solicitors, and solicitor firms, and it is something to really take into account. So you need that ability. So every person then will, when you joined up as also part of this, you'll have a peer-to-peer where you can do a fundraising of your own, and then you'll be generating money as well for the organisation as you go along. and we'll work that out for your own individual skills as you go. Again, that will be used to demonstrate on your when you decide to go into a law firm. Well, look, I do understand, and we were taught in the National Community Law Project that obviously it's a private business when you're working in law firms or a public facing business, as in PLC, public limited company. So, but this is what I was able to raise there. So I am conscious that money needs to come into organisations, and this is what I've been able to do, even though working on pro bono work for, and, pro bono support and case management that way, for clients, when they've come into the project, you know. So there is a lot there to discuss, and there will be changes as well we're making in the organisation as we're going along. So then again, that's giving you an oversight of why we're doing the things we're doing. So then when the case is there and the options are presented, the client might need some more support. So there might be a case that they do need to go to court, whether it's to file the C100, whether it's to go and attend mediation, and they might need some help with their forms, for instance, filling out an M1, understanding what that is, that kind of stuff. So we can support it there. What we cannot do is conduct litigation. So we're not going to be going in there representing anyone. We don't have any rights of audience. And that's not what we do. So if they're a person litigant, they will be representing themselves. If we can find them legal support, we'll aim to do that as much as we can. There might be some other help they might require. So they might, for instance, need, just for example, to have some negotiation, for instance, with a complaint. So they might want to draft a complaint and have that done as well. For instance, which is usually the standard way to deal with things if you've got an issue. So we can utilize the legal knowledge to get that drafted for them with all the information that they want us to put in there. Make sure that the client is happy to sign it off, and it got everything which they need, and then we can submit a really professional complaint in, if necessary. There might be work which they want to do with an ombudsman. So there's multiple different routes they can go through. But we try, and as I said, to the best of our ability, to keep the client away from the court system and try to equip them with the skills, and not that it's always possible, equip them with the skills that they need. Because realistically, persons litigants, although the courts are very lenient now, and there's been a lot of research over the years, and courts do understand difficulties of people who have not who got not no haven't got any legal knowledge can face. But however, we've got to remember that the courts do work within the law. They tend to work with precedents that are already set, unless you're going to appeal courts or Supreme Courts and changing precedents over, or adding new precedents to the courts. There's still the civil procedure rules, and whether you're a person litigant or whether you're not, you still got to comply with them. Otherwise, how you can still, and it's only fair to have the same consequences of not following them procedures as everybody else that keeps it fair. But as you know, as a person litigant, that can cause a hell of a lot of problems, especially if there's costs or sanctions put in place when it's dealing with their actual case. And then it's the finalisation of the case. Then it's kind of closing it off then, and letting them know what their options are, and if there is no further support there. What you'll tend to find, those clients do tend to come back to us as well. So it's really important, because we don't know how long they're going to be with us for. And all the case notes, which will be explained to you by the team, put in tidy and put in into our secure spaces, and then make sure that that's all there. Because then if anyone else do come back, then we make sure that all the files are going to be compliant as well. And if you're using laptops as well, and most of you will already have this, we want two-factor security on there, and to make sure that you're backing up your systems as well. But I know people typically do that anyway, but it's something out there just to make sure that you don't lose work or that kind of stuff whilst you're working on it. As soon as work is submitted, it comes over to us, and then it becomes the property of the National Community Law Project, CIC. Okay. Brilliant. So then moving forward then as well, so other things you'll be required to do. So as you kind of got that system there, is we'll have regular meetings as well, team meetings. We all discuss and cross communicate the stuff that's going on. This keeps things fresh in your mind, and it's also our job to make sure that you keep things fresh in your mind of the things you've done. And the best way to do that is get you to communicate the things you've done. Say, for instance, over that week or over 2 weeks, depending how quick we can get them kind of together, and also cross information then over to the team to see how you're working together as well. Any skills shortages or areas that's needed to develop, we will highlight. But what we will say is, and this is a really important point, I should have said this in the beginning, that if you don't apply yourself to the organisation, we're not going to waste time with anyone who's not going to be doing anything for the organisation or giving us like that kind of minimal response because we're actually here for you and we're doing a good thing for the community. So we need people we can rely on, people who are flexible, people who are adaptable, and people who can, you know what I mean, prioritize other people's needs above their own. But however, if that can't happen for any reason, and we do find that it's just not going to work out, we will spot it very quickly, and then unfortunately we will have to remove you from the organisation. And the reason, and it's a simple reason being, we cannot put clients in a vulnerable position of where things are not being done for them or it's not being done in a timely manner. And if there's any issues, we got a full support team, including myself, who's there to help with anything that you need to the best of our ability. But you do need to apply yourself moving forward because if you don't, we will just have to remove you. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for everybody. If you do become removed, and we got it wrong, we'll work on that. Very rarely do we. If it gets to that issue, because we usually would have give you a warning or two. We won't keep warning you. We don't do it that way. What we'll do is just remove you from the organisation. If we are wrong, we'll deal with it. Like I said, very rarely we're not, because what we observe is correct, and we observe things the correct way. But then you will not be coming back to the National Community Law Project, because it's a trust thing from both of us. And like I said, we get hundreds of clients every month. We can't assign clients and then not have somebody actually applying themselves to the case. So that's really important for you to know, because then if there's any issue now that you think that you're not going to be able to do that role, then you need to let us know, because then it just stops things. And what tends to happen when we do remove people, they'll either try and come back a month or two later, and where they know how much now they understand how much that experience means to them, or they're friends with somebody who's been in the organization, that kind of stuff. And then they realize that, they're really struggling to get work and any of that, but they want to come back to get that work experience. We just don't work that way. We'd rather you just tell us from the outset that it's not for you right now and then come back to us. But don't put us in a position where we start you working and then you don't apply yourself and then we've got to remove you and replace you, because that will just, which we can do easily, but I mean, you will not come back to this organization because there's no trust there. Okay, so that just got to make that very clear for you before we get on further. Yes, and then it's closing the case and making sure then that all the files are put in the appropriate secure area, and then we kind of move on to the next client then. So it's up to you. Now, I've spoken to a few of you, and some of you got some really strong areas of law, but if you want to diversify your areas, we're open to that all the time. It really depends on how much time you've got to commit. So if you want to diversify, say for instance, you want a landlord and tenant, and you might want to jump on something with employment law and also do a family case, for instance. Um, you just let us know, and then we'll make that option there for you with the needs. But it's really important that you all work together as a team. It's also really important that you can manage your own diaries as well. So if you are a team group, because remember we've literally going to have hundreds and hundreds of groups every month with different people in it. So it's up for you to manage your own time within them groups. So say for instance, if there'll probably be a minimum of three of you, it'd probably just be three to start off. I will chuck a bigger number on some on other cases as well, just to get a certain type of experience if I believe it's effective for a certain people. But remember, we've got that kind of thing, so it's really up for you to manage your own diaries to say to each other, right, when are we going to meet up and discuss this case? Do we need to have a Zoom with the client, or do one of us need to give a call to the client to find out more information with the evidence that's come through, and then managing that side of it as well. We're also going to diversify your roles. So sometimes you might be working on you might have a day or two where you're working on emails. You might have where you're bringing emails in, for instance, for different cases, and then you other put them in the appropriate box, because all of these are skills that are necessary in order to build your competency levels. If you depend on where you are and where you want to be, but to try and get a system in place, so then when you do go for your career, your legal career, you've had the experience of being able to implement different types of systems and then apply them in the most simplest context as well. So I hope that helps for an introduction. Obviously, there's more to the company, but that just gives you a general overview of what you'll be doing whilst you're in the organisation, and how it'll be managed. We'll also be bringing in different people from different backgrounds to give expertise in their area on different areas of law, for instance. So we by bringing and different barristers. Another thing which we do as well, and which we're going to be doing, is mock trials as well. So the reason for the mock trials is to educate persons and litigants if they do need to go to trial. So that means there will be a group of people, and typically we might get a barrister in who will oversee the case, and then one of you will be picked to argue against the client, and then the client will be picked to argue back their cases, and then a feedback will be given so people can increase their understanding of how it looks like. We'll also, under that kind of remit as well, do things like negotiation and mediation, where we can teach the clients how to best present their argument if they're in mediation or arbitration as well, which is really key, and they're skills that a client can take with them for the rest of their life. So it'll be a really empowering thing to do. All right then. So on that note, then I'm going to go because I've got some more things I need to do today, and I hope that gives you a really good explainer. But if you've got any questions, observations, inspirations, or explanations, let me know. Right. Thanks, team. I shall speak to you shortly.